Good morning, everyone. My name is Nancy Magaba. I am standing in for Joanne for today's topic webinar. Today, the topic is everything about the admin tab on Sage Business Cloud Accounting. So we'll go through the topic as simple as it is, but there are certain things that may seem as if they're quite difficult to understand, but we'll try to make it as simple as possible. Once again, if you cannot hear me or you're struggling with sound, try to refresh on your keyboard by pressing F5, or you can log out completely and come back in again. This should help you. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to open up the chat bot and you can send through your questions and we can get through them at the end of the session. So it's not going to be a very long session simply because the topic is quite simple and we'll try to cover as much content as we can. Before we dive into our topic today, there are a few pointers I just want you to be aware of where you can get support. If you're not going through the telephone line or the chat box, there are certain functions or rather pages where you can go to try and resolve queries on your own without spending too much time. So first of all, we do have the Sage knowledge base. So if you go, just type in the knowledge base for Sage Business Accounting, it should bring you up to this page. Now on this page, you can then search any topic or any questions that you might have on the product that you're not sure of. You should get results on a topic. So let's say, for example, you're trying to set up users on Sage Business Cloud Accounting. And if you just search for users in the knowledge base, it should come up with a few results on what you want on users. Is it adding a time tracking user? Is it changing their email address? Do you want to view the audit trail on your users? Whatever the case may be, this you will find on your knowledge base. So you can search for virtually anything. If you have multiple products, so say you've got Sage Business Cloud Accounting, you've got Sage 50, and you've got Sage 200 Evolution, you might need to reset your filters on your far left-hand side. So if you can see my screen, under products currently selected on Sage Business Cloud Accounting. But if you are using multiple products, and let's say you've got Sage 200 and you've got Sage 50 that is selected, right? If you search anything on users, it will give you results on all the 3 products that you would have selected under products. So make sure to reduce the filter results. Make sure you've got the correct products selected that you are working on. Otherwise, the results will be too long and it will take you time to find a solution. So make sure you've got Sage Business Cloud Accounting selected and you will get your results in the knowledge base. The second tool that you can use to help yourself resolve issues is our Sage City. So Sage City looks like this. If you just search for it on Google, it should bring you results for Sage City. Then in your Sage City, I'm just going to go back a little bit so that you can see what the welcome page will look like. Once you are in Sage City, it will give you a list of the different products that you want to work on. In this case, it will be Sage Business Cloud Accounting. So that is the one that you would search for before you proceed. Okay, so in Sage City, it allows you to search for queries as well. You'll see that it's a platform where everyone engages on it. So it's easy for you to find a solution, and everyone is welcome to post a solution to a query that worked for them before, and you can be sure that these are valid solutions because we do verify these solutions every single time there is a post there. So instead of just scrolling through the questions to see what was the question that was asked, you can actually search for a specific question. So say you need to find out about inventory. And you can search just the word inventory to give you results of all the questions about inventory that have been asked on the platform. So all you do is to scroll through it and find the most relevant question, depending on what your query is. You will see the solutions on there, and they are verified, so you can trust this. And one thing that you can also engage in is, if you do find that there is a question on the Sage City platform and you do know the answer, please, by all means, feel free to post your answer and help others as well. And this also reduces the time that you have to find a solution to anything that you're struggling with within the application. So those are the tools that I just thought I could share with you. So it's the Sage City as well as the knowledge base. This is very helpful, and you can use that as well. Then when you go into the application itself, you will find that there is also a PEG help here. So right in the on your top right hand corner, there's PEG there. If you click on it, you can ask your question and you'll be able to get an automatic response to the questions that you might have there. Okay, so that's PEG for you. You type in your question and you will get results of anything relating to the topic that you would have typed in there. Okay, so that's it on our on all the help features that you can get. Now, today's topic is on the admin tab in Sage Business Cloud Accounting. Now, we're not going to go through the whole list in the order that it shows here. We'll start a little bit different, simply because we want to start off with things that are easy to understand, and then we get to the crust of it. We get into the deeper things of the topic. So first of all, in the admin tab, when you go there, there's an option to log out. That's straightforward. You need to get out of your application. You can just click on the log out option and it will take you out immediately. Then second from the bottom is your My Profile tab. So this is quite helpful. You will find that most of the times when users need to find out when do they need to make payment, what are the details that are saved on their account, all that information, when was the last time they made payment, all that information can be found under My Profile. So it's administration, and then you go into My Profile. The first tab that you will see there is the billing information. So this is everything about your package. So it's your registration details, your expiry date, everything that you need to know about your package. Some might always ask, how many users or how many companies can I have on the package? This is your go-to place. So under billing information, you get all that information. This is where you find the information. In the same tab, there's also an option to do your payments at the moment. If you need to upgrade to anything, or if you need to pay your vouchers or get your subscription details, you get that information in here as well. Okay, number of users, you can check there how many, if you have upgraded from maybe a single user to maybe 5 users, the system will tell you in the screen how many users you've got and how many users you haven't made use of. Okay, so in this case, on my package, I've got the time tracking license, and under the time tracking license, I've only used one license. So next to it, it told me I've got 9 licenses available to allocate on that module. Same thing for the multi-currency module. I've only used one, so I've got 9 licenses to spare. So you can go and check into your system as well under billing information. What are the things that you have there that you're subscribing for that you haven't really made use of? So it's a good place to go and see what are you not using at the moment, and yet you are paying for it. So just go and have a look in there. The next step there is the billing address and contact details. So should you need to change your details for any reason, this is the place you need to go to. So to show you your contact details, your billing address, and yeah, that's where you can make changes if need be. That, I think this tab is very straightforward. On your My Details, so it's basically everything that you've entered when you created the company. Your name, your last name, email addresses, phone numbers, and everything. You can change the email address from this screen as well. You find that there is another place where you can do that, but in this scenario, you can change your email here, change your email address here as well. And when you do change your email address, you need to make sure that you're changing to an email address that is not already on the system. Otherwise, it will come up with an error, or it will complain about an error that you might have. Another option in here, at times when you call the support line or you start a chat on the support chat site, they might ask you for your Sage Business Cloud Accounting ID. So this is where you find it under My Details, where it says Unique Support Reference. So that is your MBR number. If they have asked you for this and you don't know where to find it, this is where you find it, your MBR number. That is a number that they ask for so they can link your name to an account that they have on the system. In the same screen, you can also change your passwords. So it gives you the option to do so there. Make sure you do that carefully and note your new password down. Otherwise, in future, it's going to be a case of, okay, I don't know my password. I'm trying to reset and it's sending to the wrong email address because you might have changed the email address here as well. So that's important to bear in mind. So that's where you get your details. And then under your credit card details, mine is blank because this is just a demo company, but on yours you will find all your credit card details there and your payment history that you've made for the package. EFT payments, same thing as well. It's just the same concept as the credit card payments tab. You will find your payment history there, how many times you've made EFT payments. It should be loaded in that screen. Now, under your preferences tab, you will find that there's also settings that will affect the way that you process in your Sage Business Cloud accounting. So for example, you've got the tab there that says number of rows to show in your grid line. So you can customize that number. Currently it's sitting on 20, but you can always change that when you do your processes, or rather you can always change that when you feel that it's that number is too little or it's too big for your customer base or your supplier base. That is where you make the changes in that screen. Okay, so just to give you an overview of what we are talking about. So if you go into your processing under your customers and then you go into your transactions, text invoice. Sorry, my screen is a little bit slow. So those are the grid lines that it's referring to. So how much do you want to see? How many grid lines do you want to see in here? That is the customization that we're talking about. So back into the admin tab, and then if you go into my profile again, you will find this under your preferences. So those numbers you can change based on what you would prefer. Okay, same thing with the number of rows to show on your transactions grid when you do your transactions, especially on your journals or your banking. This is where you customize how much you want to see. And then when you open up your Sage Business Cloud accounting, usually defaults to your accounting dashboard. That's because it's because of this setting here where it says default dashboard to display. Mine is set to accounting dashboard, but obviously you can just click on the drop down there and select exactly what you would want to see when you do log into your Sage Business Cloud accounting. What do you want to see as a welcome there? Remember to save your changes. Many times you get problems where someone has done changes in here, they forget to save the changes and they think, well, it's not working. It's simply because you forgot to save the changes. So always save your changes. And most of the times I also advise that once you save your changes for anything major, log out and log back in again, and then this should help you see that the changes have been effected. Then the last one is just an email communications checkbox. If you do want to receive any information from the team or any webinar information or news flash details, whatever the case may be, just by ticking the option to send me emails, you will be getting most of that communication. So that's it on the My Profile tab. It's basically your billing information, your personal details, and everything else related to your package that you will see on that tab. I just want to make sure there are no questions in the chat box. Give me a second to check this. Okay, it doesn't look like there's any questions, but again, guys, please feel free to send a question in the chat bot. We will get to the question at the end of the session. Okay, so that was My Profile tab. The next tab that we're going to look at, for if anyone has just joined us, we haven't done much, but we just talked about the logout option, which you can use to get out of the application. And we just discussed the My Profile tab, where you get everything about your package and also setting up certain preferences that you would want on your package. Then the next tab that you've got is Change Password. So remember, under My Profile tab, there was an option where you can change a password there as well. So here's the other option for you to be able to change your password. So you can do it in here, Administration, Change Password, or you can do it under Admin, My Profile, and then under My Details. So there's quite a few places where you can do your password changes. Okay, then the next one is Control User Access. So in your Control User Access, you get a list of all the companies that you've got on Sage Business Cloud Accounting. And then you will also get in the same screen, the top screen here, you will get a list of the companies as well as the email address of the administrator user. Okay, so many times you could have been asked by a support agent to send a support invite using the admin email address. So this would be the admin email address for the company in question. So you would need to log out of the company, then log into the company again using the correct admin email address for you to be able to send a support invite to the team. That's where you would check for it if you don't know who is the admin user. So in this case, I only have 2 companies in there, but as you click on the company, so say for example, I click on the first company, because I've got multiple companies, it's going to ask me, do you really want to continue into the other company? If so, then yes. If not, then obviously you can click on no. In this case, we'll say yes. So when I select the first company, below that, it will give me a list of all the users that are listed under the company, users that have been added to the company. If a user is not showing on this list, it means they have not been invited into the company, so they are not showing on the list. Most of the support queries we get on this is I've invited a user, but they don't seem to be able to log into the company. Chances are they've been invited into a different company that the admin user wanted them to have access to. So it's best to check on all your companies that the user is not showing on this list of invited users. So if it's not the first company, then take the second option on your list of companies, you might find the user there. So it could be they've been invited into the wrong company and you're not seeing them in the company that you really want to see them in. Okay, so at the bottom, that's your list of users, their names and the email addresses. The tab right next to it, which says user access for the company, you are able to set permissions for the users. If you are an admin user, you can even go one step further and remove or add users from there as well. Okay, so in this case, if you click on the permissions tab, It's going to take us to a screen where we can set options of what we want the users to have access for. Okay, so you can select everything if you do want the user to have access to everything. So at the bottom there, you can just select all. Otherwise, if you are more conserved and you really want to give access to certain things to a certain user and not everything in your company, then you have to drill down into each and every option that you have there and select what you need for the user. So in this case, under accountants area, I might not want the user to have access to processing journals, for example. So that will be deselected. It's the same thing with recurring journals. That will be deselected, but they can then have access to everything else. Or you don't want them to have access to any of your reporting. So you then go into the reporting feature and make sure you deselect what reports that you don't want the user to have access to. Once you do that, again, remember to click on save. Otherwise, if not, the changes will not be affected and the user can still access everything if you have selected for the user to access all the functions within the application. So that's it on the Access tab. Everything that you want your users to see or process or view, this is where you give them access in the screen. Okay, so I'm not going to save my changes. I'm quite happy with what my users can see. So that's it in the screen. Your users, your companies, you see them here, the admin email address, you also see it in that screen. This is where you control everything that your users should have access to. Okay, I'm just quickly checking if there is any problems. Okay, so someone was asking a question. Someone asked a question on the chat bot, how many users can I have on the system? That's a very good question. So the only way you can check how many users you can have on the system is, again, when you go into your administration and then you go into your My Profile. Then under My Profile on your billing information, right where it says current package, then there's number of users. Okay, number of users, it will tell you how many you are paying for, how many you've requested, how many you can actually use on the system. Okay, hopefully I answered that question. So it's under My Profile, billing information, number of users. That's where you see how many you can have on the system. Okay, any more questions? Please feel free to put them in the chat. Okay, all right. Thank you, guys. That's a good question. So remember, your billing information, you'll find it under My Profile. Okay, so back into the admin tab, we've talked about the control user access tab. Just for the sake of those that just arrived, we talked about how to log out of Sage Business Cloud Accounting, your profile, where you do change your passwords, and then where you control your user access. The next tab that we see there is the Accountant Edition user. So this tab is mostly used for your accountants. So if you need your accountants to have access to the company, this is where you do the adding of the accountant, and then you also make sure that you activate it in here. So to add an accountant, as you can see, there's a tab that gives you the option to do that. Once you click on Add Accountant Edition User, you will see the details that populate there, and you need to fill in all those filters. So it's their name, last name, email address, telephone numbers, and you activate as well once you fill in their details. One thing to note while we are still here is if you do add a user and then you need to add an email address. The user should not be an accountant edition user on the system already. Otherwise, if you do, when you do enter the email address, it will tell you that the email address is already, the user is already added on the system, and you can't really do that. So make sure it's a user that's not an existing user that's got accountant edition rights. Otherwise, it will not allow you to add the user using the same email address. Now in that screen under the admin, that's where you then give them the admin permissions that you require. If you just tick the first option that says accountant edition admin user, it will just give them the base. So it's the base of what an accountant should be doing on the system. But if you tick that option, you find some of those other options will be activated for you. So it's up to you whether you want the accountant to be able to delete other accountants on the system, or do you want them to be able to assign any other companies to the same accountant users? This is all up to you. So most of the settings here are very much self-explanatory. And you see some of them won't be activated until you select a certain option. So with the option to add or delete accountant users, then that means you need to be a registered accountant for you to be able to perform the function in the company. And then to assign clients to accountant, assign companies to the accountant edition user, then the option to edit accountant edition user permissions will be activated when you tick that option. Okay, so you can play around with the options to see what gets activated and how you can also edit those. You can always come back into the screen and make changes if you're not happy with the access that you've given the accountant edition user. So this is where you would create your accountant edition user. Remember, again, save your changes. And again, everything that you do in your admin tab, I always recommend after you save your changes, try and log out and then log back in and check if the changes have been effected. Okay, so that's it in the admin tab. And again, if you do have a list of all your accountants, you will then see the list in here, and you can obviously take certain actions, you can edit or whatever the case may be. In my case, I don't have that many accountant edition users. That's why it's blank. Okay, that's it on the accountant edition. I'm quickly checking for questions under this section. Okay, perfect. Doesn't look like there's any questions in the chat bot. We'll move on to the last section, but not the least one, on the administration tab, which is the manage users. So in this screen, you can add accountants, add users, or whatever you would prefer calling them onto your companies as well. When you do add users in this screen, another thing about the someone asked how many users can I have. If you're not sure how many users you've added and how many users are left, you can also see this in the screen. So if you scroll right to the bottom, you can see mine says you have 7 users remaining on your subscription. Okay, so in your case, if you're not sure how many users you've made use of and how many are left, just come into the screen. It's under administration, under manage users. Right at the bottom, it will tell you how many users are left under that company. Okay, so in the screen, you can add accountants, add users. Accountants, it's the same concept as the one that we just came from, where it says add accountant edition users, but in this case, it is just add an accountant. So you can do that in the screen. Then add users is much more on a lower level. When you do add your users, usually they only have certain functions. So say, for example, you've got a user that only works on your datas. You would do this here, and then you'd edit the functions that they should have access to. If you already have existing users, and you need to delete the user, you can also do this in the screen. And what's interesting about this feature as well, it will tell you what kind of a role the user will have access to. So in this case, you've got the owner right at the top, and then the regular users would show in this column where it says regular user right at the bottom. Okay, so in editing your users, it's the same concept as when you're adding permissions to your accountant, but this is a little bit slightly different. When you do edit your user, you are just changing all their personal information that you have on the system. And then in that screen, you can also switch a user from being a regular user to being an accountant on the system. So this is where you enter their details. You can edit them accordingly. And once again, when you do change email address, it should be an email address that isn't already on the system. Otherwise, if it's already there, it will give you a message that the user already exists. Okay. And then personal information, it just shows you when the user was activated, when do you want the user to be deactivated. And then if you do need to extend the date that the user need to be deactivated on, you can also do that in there. You can put a reason as to why you want to extend the date that the user can work on the system from that screen as well. Okay, so it's just creating your users, adding their details, and that's it. Notes is just an additional tab that allows you to complete any information about the user that you might want to be kept on the audit trail there. Okay, so that's it on manage users. Accountants at the top, can add them in that screen, just for the sake of us seeing what it would look like. If you click on add accountant, it's basically the same things again. Their details, information, what you want the user type to be, everything will be in that screen. And then at the bottom, you have the option to save the user. So that is it on the admin tab. Any questions, please feel free to bring them through now. I'm just going to do a quick summary of what we talked about today in case someone missed out on anything. But while I do that, please put in your questions and let us know what's that burning question. Hopefully we can get an answer on that. So just a summary on today's topic webinar about the administration tab in Sage Business Cloud Accounting. We started off with right at the bottom where you have the option to log out. That's how you would do it from the administration tab. It just takes you out of the company, and then you can log in again once that screen closes your current company. Then you have the My Profile tab where we did talk about if you want to see what you are subscribed for, you can see it in that screen, your information, your address, your details, your support reference number that they usually ask from you when you call into support or when you do start a chat. Changing passwords, you can do that in that screen as well. And then your credit card and EFT payments, all in under your My Profile tab. And then preferences, how you'd want to view your displays when you are processing on Sage Business Cloud Accounting. That's it under the My Profile tab. And then you also have the change password, which is straightforward. You do your password changes in that screen, and you also have the control user access screen. This will give you a list of all your companies, the email address of the administrator for each and every company that you have in the list, as well as all the invited users to the company and the permissions that they have. For you to see the individuals that are invited in a company, you select a company first before you proceed, and then once you click on yes on the message, it will refresh the page and show you a list of all the users that are invited in that company. And then on your far bottom right corner, you can then set the permissions for those users. Remember to save the changes in that screen. Then the next screen we talked about was Accountant Edition User, where you can add your Accountant Edition user. We went into that screen just to do an overview of what are the options you can tick for the user, what access you want them to have, and this is where you control everything under your Accountant Edition users. Then the last tab was the Manage Users. This is where you can add an accountant or add users at the bottom and give them their specific roles. And in the same screen, you can also check how many users are left or how many users you can still add on the company. Okay, so that was just a summary of what we've talked about today, what we've discussed, and that's it about the administration tab. Are there any questions that you would like us to answer? If so, please send them in the chat below. I know our topic webinar was very short, but very necessary. There are certain things that might need clarity on, that you might need clarity on, and hopefully we've done that for you. If you do have any questions, please let us know and we can try to answer your questions.